lot of G-Zens, what a lot of Generation Z struggles with is the lack of apparent opportunity to form an identity. Is the lack of opportunity, seemingly opportunity to form an identity, because everything is so updated and upgraded as far as the processes. See, for us, we just had in our generation, the millennials, we had your flesh and blood mentors. It was about that at the time. It was about flesh and blood mentorship. A lot of one-to-one care. A lot of, if anybody remember, yeah, I remember back when teachers used to care, man. They used to care. They used to really go the extra lift, the extra mile. Yup. We're far removed from that now. Because what Big Papa and Big Mama and them had to share somewhere along the line, either in our millennial generation or even before, somewhere along the line, the ball was dropped, the torch was dropped. Somewhere, possibly along the millennials, the torch that was supposed to be passed on to Generation Z, torch dropped. And what does the drop torch do? Start to fire. So you have Generation Z on fire. This is like the ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Generation Z is stepping into that room, that last room where the lead character lays down as an old man. He's looking at himself as an old man from the table, looking at himself as an even older man on the bed. And then comes the monolith, which they say is TV was the big gem. Like, this was what the big block in 2001: Space Odyssey was that was driving people mad. It was the block. They say it was the TV. That was the monolith. You know, they say when you hold it, it looks like a flat screen when you hold it the other way. But I say just the way it is, it looks exactly like a smartphone. If you look at 2001: Space Odyssey, you can't tell me that's not it's not an iPhone 6. Probably not as, probably thicker. An iPhone 6 with the case, an iPhone 12, an iPhone 12 Pro. Look at Stanley Kubrick's 2001: Space Odyssey again and tell me that's not a cell phone. And tell me that it doesn't match. Tell me that it doesn't match all of the sensitivities and backdrop that comes with a smartphone-dominated society. And this block, is this monolith, is this cell phone, right? Nothing wrong with a cell phone, but you can see the cell phone in it. This is a 2024 Inner Earth Odyssey. We took it 23 years ago, right? The number of DNA 23 years ago would have been 2001. So if you're looking at the end of 2001, when you see the star child, the star seed, looking at the camera, but he's headed toward the earth. The earth is the mission, but then before he goes to the mission, he looks to us. And then the reason for the end credits playing the music for over 3 minutes with a black screen is to show us how we entered the monolith as the viewer. I don't know if anybody broke down that part yet in terms of the film analysis on 2001: Space Odyssey. But this 2024 Space Odyssey that we're on is the same story. Just like we're back again at the dawn of man. We're back at Generation Alpha. We're starting at the beginning of the alphabet again. After Z. See, Z is their mentality, not the whole Generation Z, but a lot of the Generation Z that's crashing out and spinning out and have no understanding or concept of respect, they're going crazy from the monolith. They're going crazy from the cell phones. They pick up a cell phone, they cussing somebody out that's almost twice their age. They pick up a cell phone, they messing up their lives. They pick up a cell phone, they hacking, they doing scams. It's not the entire Generation Z, because you have a demonic reservoir in every generation. It's just the way it's hitting Generation Z is so violently overwhelming that what the scriptures say is like finding hen's teeth. It's like expecting to find a tooth in the mouth of a hen. That's how hard it is to see or find somebody in Generation Z that has their head on straight, because Generation Z came after the first part of the end of the world. So that's everybody born in like 1998, 1999. They was born right at the apocalypse. This is Generation Z. When they came into the world was already pushed away from the ideals of community and personhood and personage. These were the last scrappings of it. It meant we only had about maybe another decade of a regular society left. So between like 99 and 09, we were already in the midst of a different world with the fading traces of the old world. We thought that the wonder years of that brief inflation period in the early 2000s was going to be the mark of how culture was. So we started to coordinate more activities that's outside. More restaurants and bars started to do the patio thing. More theme park deals, etc. Everything was starting to lead people back to functioning outside again. But at the same time, the way the tone of the world was going was eventually going to lead to a quarantine some 20 something years later. And so now we're in neither one of our worlds. So you have people in Gen Z that don't see the world changing because they're stuck in just a part of their cell phone. They're stuck in the monolith, just like the apes. The monolith drove them crazy, just like the astronauts on the Jupiter mission, Mars mission. The monolith drove them crazy. Because the monolith says, when you pick it up, whatever you want to be about, whatever you want to see, is what goes on this monolith. So what do you think they're putting on the monolith? Well, it shows up in their character. How do they behave? See, we saw the traces of this, of the effects of the monolith driving our generation crazy when we saw people taking more selfies than eye blinks and snapshots of their family, building entire photo albums in like 1 week. In 1 week, just they know where you go to work, they know where you live, they know who you are, they know who your friends are, they know what your family look like, they know what, you know what I mean? They know what everybody in your household look like, and they know all the places you go, because vanity is sometimes not as fleeting as we think. Now, when the millennials started getting real heavy into Facebook, it became the new MySpace at first. It was still that same forum energy. You know, you still had to battle people who was replying to your post all crazy. It was a different reality. And now, with everything being like pretty much Instagrammed up with the Instagram formula, video post comment, you know, post video comment. Now we're stuck in an eternal news cycle because something about the internet or something about social media tells people that they are journalists. The app, it's not really a journalistic app. None of the social media apps are really journalism apps. But it's just so funny that the programming of all who watch the news, all of a sudden they turn into Dead Rabbit, don't they? You know what I mean? As soon as they get that mic, they turn into, oh, this happened with this celebrity and this happened with that celebrity. And now we pose an even deeper challenge to a open opportunity, and that is how are they able to forge their way through using traits that already died off? Because our people was already staring into their screens. They already couldn't stop looking at their phones. These grown folks now. This is in my generation. We had people that when Facebook really started getting spicy, it was bad. I think it was even worse than it is now to an extent. When Facebook first, I'm talking about the first 5 years of Facebook, it was a nightmare just watching people socially devolve at a phenomenal rate. It started off with something as slight as hold on. It started as hold on, I got a call. That was how it was back in the day. You know, the hold on, I got a call. That was the most interruption you ever got. If somebody had to, you know, grab something because they had a call coming in for something, they had to do something. Like, all right, hold on, I gotta get this. It went from that to you go in the restaurants and everybody's looking down at the table, but not at their food ain't even there yet. Whole table full, nobody's looking each other in the eye. Everybody looking down in their phones because they're trapped in the monolith. It's a 2024 space odyssey. So they get stuck. And what happens when you get stuck on the wrong side of the smartphone, right? What if you end up becoming a dummy with a smart phone? Here's what's gonna happen. Whoever or whatever you're consuming, this is who you're gonna essentially be. You're terraforming yourself to be whatever you're watching most of the time. You know, people don't realize this. They think it's fun, it's games, and oh, that was so funny. Look at how that person just hit this person. Little do you know, it's a certain seed being sown. There's veins and roots being wrapped around your heart to make sure that the next time you lose your temper, you do that thing that was seemingly silly, but now you executing that thing in anger. So now you have become the entertainment. And you have people living rent-free in your head because of the social conditioning of the back and forth that goes online and how much you're in your phone watching that back and forth. Now, there's some people who in Generation Z who could probably stand to watch a couple of arguing videos, a couple of back and forths, because you do have a portion of Gen Zs that are doomers, that are debilitatingly depressed, can't even move, can't even clean themselves, can't even clean around them, can't even think. They're really just a vegetable with a set of commands, just enough commands and enough actions to make you think that they're living, but they're really dead. And that's unfortunate because all of these shows about The Walking Dead, The Living Dead, Return of the Dead, everything was about zombies. You know, they tried to tell us, Hollywood was trying to tell us, welcome to Zombieland, welcome to Zombieland Part 2, this person versus zombies. Shaun versus the zombies. Zombies versus the world. Zombie slumber party. Everything was zombied out. Why? The movies was a commentary on society. Where do you think the movies pulling this stuff from? From us? They sitting there watching us, however they watch us, and they making the synopsis. So the synopsis, rightfully so, from about 2005 and up, zombie mania. It was all zombie. Everybody was a zombie. Everybody was a zombie in promoting zombie talk. There was zombie shows. There was zombie designer drugs. There was zombie outfits. Then the most popular holiday became to be Halloween. This is when Halloween started to win, right? Because you gotta admit, you got more horror movies than Christmas movies. So if it's a horror movie, it's a Halloween movie. Because the essence of horror is from Sam Hain, from Halloween. It's from the Hallows Eve. And so to make the night sacred, there was an object. Going back to 2001 Space Odyssey again and connecting this with sacred geometry, the number one the first sacred geometrical object is the rectangle. That's the altar, that's the portal, that's the reality generator, that's the template. So the rectangle the entire time, according to sacred geometry, the rectangle was always intended to be a portal. The rectangle was always intended to be a black mirror, a black screen. It was always intended to be these things. And I know you're saying, it's just a cell phone. There's no portal. I can't jump in and out of that. Yeah, you can jump in and out of your show. You can jump on and off of your page. Yeah, you're in your phone. Just because you can't fit inside the rectangle, if you press record, you'll fit inside the rectangle. So it's a rectangle. So you have to deal with the shape. Now this is a sacred shape though. So anything that comes through this rectangle is very powerful. The rectangle itself can even prove to be more powerful than what's happening inside the rectangle. So we want to make sure that that we're not crashing out as the last line of defense, being the OG millennials. The OG millennials are really like the last line of defense, right? Because the boomers are all riding off into the sunset. You figure 60s, 70s, they really can't be on the front lines of this part of the revolution, and rightfully so, right? Because that last set of boomers, they had to deal with the 60s. They had to deal with civil rights. They had to really deal with some hardcore levels of racism and prejudice. Like some of them even had to see segregation. Some of them really had to experience that. If you're like in your 60s or 70s, as that second set of millennials, I'm not talking about the first set. The first set may not be around. You know, if they're still around, they might be like 90 something. You know, that is the last part of the first set of the millennials. Millennials are split into two groups. It's the ones that were born. It's the millennials that well, I should say not two millennials, but two boomers. I'm sorry. Two boomers. There were the ones who were born in the 40s and 50s. Or I should say the ones that was 50s, 60s. And then you have the other millennials that was 70s and 80s. So you had two sets of them. I guess they didn't want to, do what they did with the alphabet, or I guess they didn't want to really go with the Generation X, because there was something coded in I guess in the X is a very, very, very strong number, or letter rather, the letter X. The letter X. So they was like, we can't do that because X sometimes, what is that, like is that the 25th letter of the alphabet out of 26? I could be wrong. But if it is 25, 2 plus 5 is 7, and 7 is the God force. That's the number of the 7 days of creation. And then you have the X, which is basically a cross being carried. So no wonder why Brother Musk, right, brother Elon, why no matter how much he says it's X, it's X, it's X, they still Twitter, you know what I mean? They're still screaming, it's Twitter. It's like, it's not Twitter, it's X. It's like, it's not X. Malcolm is X. This is Twitter. I know, Brother Musk. You can tattoo it on their forehead. They probably are not going to call Twitter X. Maybe they will, because we see the cross-bearing nature of what some of your tweets can get involved in. They crucified me. Yeah, well, they called it X. X is a cross that's being carried. The cross wasn't carried with one hand. It wasn't a T. It's not like how they show it on in a lot of the congregations. And that's the Lucifer trick. Well, yeah, you could say it's a form of Luciferian magic just to have the cross the way it is. At first they used to give us flack about well, you can't have a crucifix. You don't want to have the Jesus up there hanging. And that's understandable. But then the cross, you still have the death symbol. Just because you took the man, you might as well just say, get that electric chair off your neck, because it's still a death penalty symbol. How many do you see anybody walking around with lethal injection needles attached to their chain or medallion? Does anybody have a medallion of a firing squad? These are all different methods of execution via capital punishment. If you don't see anybody wearing that jewelry, then they played a trick on you. And you still have people that's in the temple right now putting the cross above the man who died on it for sins. How you like them apples? And they'll preach it hard too. To them, Jesus means nothing if not for the cross. When those of us on the other side is saying, look, this whole idea of Jesus and what he's doing for these people and what he's teaching us, these lessons, these are big things too. Let's not minimalize what he's talking about. Let's not minimalize that the meek shall inherit the earth. Let's not minimalize that the peacekeepers shall be called the children of God. Not the ones that starting up beef and ruckus and circular arguments. Not the ones that starting fierce, harsh, mean, vicious, spirited debates. Not them, the peacemakers and the peacekeepers. They'll be called the children of God. They will inherit the earth. They will be the ones that will be transformed into heaven, while their counterparts opposite end will be transformed into hell. You still think it's a place where you're going? No, it's a place where you're going to become. It's not a place where you're going. It's a place that you're turning into. It's a place that you're being transformed into. The scriptures say they will be transformed into hell. They will be turned into hell. Talking about people's eyes rotting out of their mouths, tongues rotting out of their mouths. Whether physical or not, you can read between the lines. The miserable, they only see misery. The negative minded, they only speak misery. They only speak conflict and contention. That's what they do. They live in the ring. They live in the fight. And the interesting part about it, even there's magic even in that, because a ring is not a ring. That's a box that they're fighting in. I think they're fighting in a square. But they don't call it a square. They say, you got to get in the ring. Get in the ring. Right? So you have these crash outs from the Gen Zs that came from the tap out of Generation X, Y, the OG millennials. This is what you came up with. This is what you come up with when you go on autopilot in front of your babies and they're watching God knows what. When you're not paying attention, they're beginning to rot. When the kid is 3, 4, 5, 6 years old and they sound more like the shows that they're watching than you're already fighting uphill now, immediately. And you might be too involved in your shows and whatever you got going on to realize it. Facts. And so you get a whole generation out here that's under 30 that don't even know how to be. They don't even know how to be. Generations for the millennials, it was, we don't know what to do. We gonna do something. We don't know what to do. We knew how to be. We knew what to be. We just ain't know what to do. You know, you would have people with managerial level talent working at the cashier. What are you doing? I don't know what to do. You know, you had magnificent orators and administrators far and wide with all kinds of oratorical and linguistic gifts, right? Moving boxes. Like, what you doing? I don't know what to do. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know what to do. Fortunately, in that not knowing what to do, you have millennials that were just inventing stuff because it got harder to create what to do until we was like, you know what, I'm gonna create what to do, and this better be right. And the idea of you creating something was the right move. So for millennials, we were prompted by boredom to be inventive. We invented social media. That came from the millennials. Make no mistake about it. This is really our world. And the Gen Zs are being excommunicated out of it. They're the machines. Generation Alpha is not the machines. Generation Alpha is the machine controllers. You seen the picture, you seen the little video with the baby, a tablet in one hand, a cell phone in the other, scrolling. Gen Zs can't do that. Not all of them. Believe it or not, a lot of Gen Zs are not even technologically inclined. And that's a hard sell right now. And a very, very, very soft target. Because to be 25 and under and not know how to use technology for reasons other than lack of exposure, we're not counting people who don't have a cell phone or don't have access to that kind of technology. We're not including them because we understand that they don't have a cell phone, so we're not really charging them to that. But the ones who do have a cell phone or have access to a cell phone, a lot of them are trapped in the wrong side of their cell phone. I know, because the first traces of social media entertainment was very, very, very tempting. I think I watched every last World Star when it first came out. I'm talking about, it was like 30 fight compilation videos. Man, I was binge watching every last one of them. Like, oh, World Star, oh, slap up. I was on all of that in the early 2010s. Yeah, I was watching all of that stuff. But that wasn't all that I was watching. I was also watching stuff that help you grow. You know, what is the nature of the workforce gonna be in the next 10 years? What's the money gonna look like? Are we still gonna be using cash? What's gonna happen? Is the Antichrist coming? You know, we still had to research what we were led to research as millennials on a mission. So we had a desire to want to know enough to really change the world if we didn't like it. That trait is entirely gone now. Gen Z at best is saying, man, I'm gonna do my thing and just make it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna just see what my thing is about, right? And that's along the right track, because that's kind of what you got to do anyway. You got to find your own way. But they're caving in. It's that analysis paralysis, because they're presented with too many options, and I understand. It's just too many options. You don't know what to choose from. And what do you do if you're a person who never really had anything? How do you make a well-informed multiple choice when you're not used to even having choices like that? So it drives folks crazy before they monoliths, because they just can't handle how many options there are. The interesting thing is with the millennials growing up, it was the lack of options that really gave us our best social skills. This is why Generation Z will never understand what game is, because their communications via smartphone kind of robs them of that. Because things like game, we're talking about really spitting game. Things like game can only be realized in real time. It's reading the person's reactions, it's looking them in the eye, reading their body language, and communicating accordingly. That's game, essentially. And to do it effectively, to the point where it's amiable for the other person, where they had a great experience talking to you. Right, spitting game is not about spitting lies. Spitting game is about how well you can communicate. That's all it is. Whether it be true or false, game is nothing but a short word for excellent communication. Excellent communication, that's what game is. Excellent communication will take you very, very far. But what happens is sometimes there's no communication, and the utter lack of communication is where the breakdown is. So you have a generation that's just stuck in their phones like this, that's not even getting any practice. They're not even getting any practice with being social. Whereas we didn't start with the smartphones. When we were growing up, the smartphones weren't here yet. Those cell phones were anything but smart. They was plugged up to people's cars. They was attached. People had a big old walkie-talkie block on the ear, like they was holding a Nintendo against their face, like they was holding a VCR on their shoulder, like, you know what I mean? And we went from that to Neuralink. So hopefully, we can still exhibit characteristics of real authentic humanity through this sacred geometrical rectangle, for the sake of re-evolving. Super T Sigma, Sigma programming. Stay illuminated. Peace.